Welcome back to Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Last time, we infiltrated Daein Keep only to find out that Ashnard was not there. Instead, there was a massive anticlimax boss and her name was Ina. Yeah, dragons not having range attacks, kind of a bad thing in this game. And now we move on to, in my opinion, the single most bizarre chapter in the game, and one of the most bizarre chapters in the series. Also, we get super ominous map music here. Overcoming many hardships, Ike and company finally arrive in the Daein capital of Navasa. However, much to their dismay, King Ashnard is nowhere to be found. According to intelligence reports, the king is in Crimea's capital of Melior, preparing to wage war against Gallia. In addition, at least half of the Daein army, including its most elite forces, remain unharmed and at his side. The Crimean army is again forced to march. This time, however, the battlefield will be their own homeland. Eagerly awaiting their arrival is a Daein army more powerful than anything they have faced so far. This fact, coupled with Nasia's act of betrayal, has filled Ike with apprehension and disappointment. Yet, it is then, when all hope seems faint, that unexpected good news arrives. Now, the title of this chapter is kind of weird, and I think makes more sense in Japanese. In Japanese, it was something along the lines of, "One sings alone." And no, that's not an FE Fates reference at all. But I can see how they got solo out of that as a translation if they were looking at completely out of context. But in context, I feel like they should have been a little more literal here, because solo doesn't really make a lot of sense. When I first read this chapter title, I was thinking, what, does this mean Ike's going it alone for a chapter or something? But no. So the weirdest thing about this chapter is that most of its plot events are completely unrelated to the actual battle we're going to be having in it. It's a rare example of a chapter that story-wise is not filler at all, but gameplay-wise it could not get any more filler. So first up, reinforcements from Benyon. And they're not orange, so they're obviously not those weird unknown troops that we fought before, who I still don't think Ike realizes were from Daein. Oh, introducing a new NPC so late into the game. That's kind of interesting. I like how we actually get cutscenes inside the throne room of Daein Keep now. It gets even more, in some senses, mood-whiplash-y once we get to the actual base. Cuddle, I believe, has been correctly translated. He's actually one of Benyon's really, really high-ranking generals, so getting reinforcements from him is a pretty high honor. Knowing the Senate, that's kinda suspicious. They probably have some ulterior motive at play here. And they finally got his duchy's name right. Yes, Persis is Sephiron's actual, the name of Sephiron's actual province. They didn't mistranslate it as Duke Blessies here. Also, probably the only member of the Imperial Senate who's not crazy, power-hungry, and evil. Him, the Apostle, and now Zelgia seem to be the only allies we have in all of Benyon. Again, I find that very, very suspicious, but we should at least be thankful for it. So, they pledged support to us earlier, but it's only now that we're officially allies. Ike has no idea what to say here. You know, another pre-promote general might not be a bad idea. Would you like to join us? That's kind of what I was thinking when I first got to this point in my first playthrough. But he's going to take the Tanith approach here and just go, you do your own thing. We've just got reinforcements from Bednion, and we've received word that Gallia might be joining the war too. At this point, it's pretty much everyone against Daein, which is actually exactly what Ashnard wants. You know, I feel like Soren's gonna butt in right about now. There we go. Now, Soren's about to say some things that, can't really say much about yet, but, let's just say Soren kinda has a point here. The Apostle wouldn't, but remember who else runs Bednion. That's kind of what Soren does. And normally I'd be against Soren suspecting everyone, but he's been kinda right a few times lately. I feel like the whole arc in Daein is probably some of Soren's best moments. This was kind of about the point where Soren started to make up a little bit for his actions during the Gallia arc. Only a little bit, though. And by mid in 1 hour, he means meet after we've done the base. Also, it's pretty awesome that we're having the report right in Ashnard's old throne room. Gatrie was MVP? That's kind of weird. Wonder if that'll be the last time that happens. Maybe not. Gatrie's been pretty good this playthrough. So yeah, there were quite a few cutscenes here. And let me just quickly check in terms of what new supports we have. Doesn't look like we can really do any supports with Ike. And annoyingly, Jill and Leth are not at A yet. Ugh. But we did get Khalil and Nephany as support, which is interesting because, yeah, the one annoying thing about me using Nephany in this playthrough is she doesn't have a lot of support synergy with the rest of my party. However, I'm kind of glad I did this because Khalil and Nephany is a support chain that I really like, so I might as well show this. And also, yeah, like I was mentioning mood-whiplash, we get to have support conversations in Ashnard's former throne room. So depending on what supports you do here, this can get pretty hilarious. It's also pretty awesome that we're actually having the base in Daein Keep this time. Anyway, Khalil and Nephany's supports are interesting. This is also not the first time I've seen a country girl who doesn't like makeup and presenting herself interacting with a city girl who's obsessed with that kind of thing and wants to teach her how to be pretty and sociable. This does go to show that, yeah, Nephany is actually pretty interesting because she's not your typical country accent-speaking character. Most of them tend to be pretty passionate about where they come from, but Nephany is much shyer and she tends to hide her accent. One cool thing about this is, if you look up Nephany's supports with Brom, Nephany does not stutter or hesitate at all in those conversations. She just speaks completely naturally because, you know, she's with someone from her home village who she doesn't have to worry about embarrassment around. It's kind of a nice touch. But I don't want to take away from this conversation itself. We all know how this tends to work. The rain in Bednion stays mainly in, I don't know. I'm just picturing Nephany being forced to wear ridiculous makeup. And being forced into an extremely over-the-top outfit, and I would like to see fan art of that, because that would be hilarious. And Nephany just having this "please kill me now" expression on her face. But anyway, Khalil and Nephany's supports get interesting towards the end, because I'm probably not going to show them in this playthrough, so I guess I can say it, but it was kind of implied there. So basically, it turns out Khalil is secretly from the country too. But don't tell anyone I told you that. It's a pretty nice support chain overall. But that's the only support that I'll do for now. That one is gameplay hints. This one is kind of interesting. So I was saying previously, I mean in the last chapter, about how we actually had some people from Daein in our army. Well, we're about to find out something. Haven't had a conversation with Soth for ages. You know, knowing the person that you're searching for, they have ridiculously bad defense and HP, I think you really should be worried about them. Just easier to assume that the sequel will answer all these questions. So yes, Soth is actually from Daein. I guess I can explain. The other person from Daein is Zihark. I don't think you find that out. No, actually, no, he does say it, I think, in some of his support conversations. But that becomes more relevant in Radiant Dawn. So yeah, it was particularly ironic that Ike had that whole conversation about how, oh, all Daeins are evil back in Chapter 12, and that was when you recruit Soth, who just happens to be from Daein, and he seems to be a pretty nice guy, so yeah. Well, apart from the fact that he steals things, but... I also think this line implies some things. I wonder if those friends Soth is referring to are a brown-haired Myrmidon, a blonde-haired archer who sucks, and a fighter with an awesome moustache who is generally awesome. I mean, it's never directly stated, but I like to think those three are the friends that Soth is referring to. And we get this pointed out again, which comes up quite a lot in Shinnen's battle dialogue back in Chapter 18 if you try and fight him. The interesting thing about this, though, is someone pointed this out to me in comments, and the implications of it are pretty interesting to think about. So, this whole thing about you can become anything you want if you're strong enough under Ashnard, it's technically true, but as you can see with Shiharam, there are still prejudices involved. For example, sure, he was given a very high position in the army, but he was also assigned to a backlot location where his authority didn't really matter. So, it's kind of like a true from a certain point of view kind of thing. You technically have high positions, but they still might not matter if you're not the kind of people who, they really want getting ahead. And sadly, that kind of thing does happen a lot in real life as well. Also, we get, more examples of characters from the enemy country lamenting the fact that you're invading it. So that's an interesting conversation. Now this one. This one's a bit of a mood whiplash. That's a weird thing to open a conversation with, even to a military general. But, yep, it's that wargame again. It's been a while since they mentioned that. I wouldn't exactly say chew to him, but... yeah, I doubt they'd be doing pretty well in that kind of situation. Yeah, I admit that it's a little insensitive to be going on about war games to someone who's actually been in real war. Although, at least we get a little bit of, just info on how, I don't know, these people feel a little... I don't know, a little bit useless sometimes. But here's the actual hint in this conversation. One of the many, many, many uses of shoving. Of course, you have to make sure that you shove them in the right position, otherwise they might be able to attack you anyway. No, it's kind of understandable for Ike to be like this at this point. So, that's all we get out of that. Now, let's see. Skills, we picked up a few in the last chapter. Something that I find funny is that parity. Parity costs only 5 capacity, even though you can't benefit from other skills while you have this skill on, and thus it really should cost 20 capacity or something. But that's kind of funny. Provoke on Ike is also decent. I'm kind of maybe saving Provoke. I think I've mentioned this before. Corrosion, I probably won't ever be teaching that. Wrath, I think I'm saving for later. And, oh yeah, I have another Occult Scroll. I promised that I'd teach that to Gatrie, so I might as well go ahead and do that. Provoke is kind of okay on Gatrie. The issue is that it draws in Siege Tomes, which he's not great at tanking, and also it draws in enemies that he can't double, and thus, means less enemies die on the enemy phase. You know, to be honest, I'm actually starting to regret giving Nephany Vantage. I feel like Vantage Guard on Jill would have been so much better. In fact, Nephany might have made better use of Adept. The issue is that Nephany just doesn't get hit enough to really get into Wrath range, so the Vantage Wrath combo's not doing all that much for her, thanks to her high defense and speed. Now, I could go ahead and give Leth Smite. Smite does help going into this next chapter, but regular shoving is fine for the most part, so I think I'll just, I think I'll stick with that for now. Yeah, there is something that I plan on maybe doing later, and I can just say now, I don't plan on using Wrath Resolve on Ike, but I might do Wrath Resolve with someone else. Okay, also he's something kind of weird. Soren, for some reason, is all the way down here on my list of characters. Don't know how he ended up that far down. Sometimes I like to use bonus experience after every chapter to even out everyone's levels. Because we're all mostly around 10 promoted, which is pretty decent at this point, but as you can see, even though we have a lot of bonus experience right now, it's costing a lot more to level up everyone. Okay, that's also pretty good, although I don't think that's max, no, it's not max skill. And now we come to the moment of truth. Come on, gain speed, please. Okay, that's fine. Only a few more points of defense until you're capped on that stat too, and your skill is a little behind as well, I think, which is weird because I've given you the Archer Band. Anyway, Ike is doing alright. Now, in terms of weapons, I think Soren is the one who's... Oh yeah, also, let's go ahead and convoy some of this stuff. Who gets the Brave Sword? Sadly, I might have to give this to Ike, because he may need it eventually. And let's see. Soren, Khalil has an extra elf undertone. Alright, that's what I need to do. Okay, so this is the chapter where I need to give Meteor to Soren. Even though I might not end up needing it, but I at least want to show one thing that you can do with Meteor in this chapter. So I'm going to give that to Soren. I'm going to keep Ballsy on Khalil because I'm going to be deploying her in this one. And you might as well... How many spears do I have here? I've got 2 spears. I might as well give the spear to someone. You go ahead and take a spear, and you might like that Lagoo's Lance too. We're gonna be facing a couple of feral ones here. Also, you don't want that corrosion. I might as well end up selling corrosion. And Mist is going to... You are gonna probably need a fresh physics staff. There are some silent staff enemies in this chapter, and Mist is gonna have to stay away from the front lines for most of it, so I might as well take another physics staff. Rescue is also pretty decent in this chapter too. As for Stefan, I won't be needing the Armor Slayer, so... Is there anything good you can take here? The Lagoo Slayer might not be a bad idea. And what are you selling? You're selling javelins, not hand axes, L-Fire. Yeah, I forgot to stock up on L-Wind after I forgot to save in that one chapter. Also, I'm gonna need to take some chest keys here, because I think I only have room to deploy 1 thief, and there are enemies that drop chest keys, but they won't be enough to cover all of the chests in this chapter. Also, you just broke a javelin, didn't you? So I might as well give you something. Yeah, just a regular javelin. Your strength is so high, you don't really need the spear. And I think that's alright. What are you at a... You're not even a D rank in swords yet. And as for you... Won't need the poleaxe in this chapter either. Let me take the tomahawk, actually. And I think for now, actually, wait. You could use something as well. Go ahead and take an extra steel lance. Okay, that should be everything. So, let's head out to the very bizarre filler part of this chapter. Oh, and hi there, Zelgius. And we'll also lose Tactics rank if one of our castles gets captured. No, wait, this isn't Fire Emblem 4. I know, I love to make jokes about that, but I kind of like the castle system in that game. Of course, people will be used to moving around with a large army in 3 houses, but that's not for, as of recording this, another half a year or so. And usually you keep the number of people involved in a Fire Emblem mission as small as possible. Once again, Ike, sometimes you don't realize that you're unintentionally offending people. So, this is a mission to go to where Nasir told us to in the last part. Palmeni Temple. He didn't really leave much of a clue as to what to do here, though, or why we should even go here. So, from a story standpoint, all we need to do is go inside the temple and look at a certain room. That's all that needs to happen. But, if that happened, there wouldn't be any gameplay, so there needs to be some kind of battle here. Also, more discussion about Nasir betraying everyone. Yeah, that narrows down the list of suspects, and it obviously wouldn't be Titania. Or Alincia. So like I was saying, we need to have a battle here, so... What did the writers resort to? Random bandits! Yeah, this late in the game, they're giving us bandits, because they couldn't think of anything better to do. Or rather, mercenaries who sided with Daein, but still, they're pretty much bandits. I also find this guy's name really weird. Tomonami, it's just such a bizarre name. Also, this guy's dialogue is... it's pretty interesting. One thing to note is that the localization punched up this guy's dialogue a lot, and I feel like they could afford to because he was just a filler one-off villain, and I almost feel like he exists to be a bit of comic relief after all the heaviness of Chapter 19's reveal, Chapter 20, and even Chapter 21 revealing Nasir being the traitor. This guy is kind of the first comic relief we've had in a long time, so I can kind of see why this chapter exists, but it's about to get even weirder. So, I just find it kind of funny that Raisin is just in here, hovering around, and no one bats an eye at that. Also, a line coming up is very good. This is a very large room. At least they don't waste much time in getting to the point. Is this Nasir's doing? Actually not. And we're actually not here to fight them, so they're probably not gonna believe us if we tell them that, though. And Ike's even fully aware these are just filler villains. And here's the downright bizarre gimmick of this chapter introduced. These generic bandit people are using priests as human shields. In order to complete this chapter, we have to play a sliding puzzle with priests and push them out of the way in the right combination. It's just such a weird map gimmick. And for this to happen just kind of in the middle of the Daein arc where the plot is all coming together as well. And this is where that hint from the base comes into play. There are a lot of enemies here that we don't want to kill. As you would expect, you get bonus experience for every priest that survives this map. You also get a very special reward if all the priests survive. It's not that hard to keep them alive, but one of them in particular can be a little tricky. And with that we begin the strangest chapter in the game.